Now, joining us from Worcester, yes, to give us a more full understanding of this as a national issue. Howard, just take up.
Great, thank you, Matt. National, yes, but I'm going to be focused on Massachusetts and Worcester, and which Bill gave this overview that says there was a different type of system of local elections in Worcester from 1949 to 59. And I'd like to share a little more information on that as we go about what it shares with ranked choice voting and is part of ranked choice voting, why it came, why it left, why it needs to come back. In addition, we're going to relate that to the state elections because in Massachusetts, we're talking about the way we elect all our officers, the governor and all the executive offices, as well as the legislative and our federal officers that go down to Washington. So we're going to tie all this together and we're going to explain ranked choice voting if you have any questions or need more understanding about this simple process. And then we're going to also be talking about what is the way it's going to become the way we elect people. So it's going to cover all of this. But I want it to be pretty interactive. And I'm going to start right now. Can you tell me what bugs you about elections in Massachusetts? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
We always seem to be choosing the lesser of two evils.
Lesser of two evils, a frequent phrase, and not, do you have enough choices?
No. Nope.
Okay. Why do you vote for the lesser of two evils?
Because you don't want the greater of two evils.
Okay. And so you feel that if there's multiple candidates on the ballot, and someone speaks to your concerns, and yet you're not sure they're going to cut it and make and get over that hurdle and win enough votes and become the elected representative or in any office, then you're worried about voting for that person. You're not voting freely, okay? Yes. And yes?
The incumbent always seems to get angry.
Incumbency is a well-known phenomenon. That, I'm going to be honest, doesn't necessarily change if we change to this ranked choice voting. In fact, one of the things that you might say if ranked choice voting, and we'll be getting into how it works and why, we might assume we've now found a better way to find out who the winner should be, okay? And we get the true majority winner, and that person goes into office. Yes, ranked choice voting would allow more voices to be heard by encouraging more people to be on the ballot, no split votes, no spoilers, all that stuff. But it's still the next election, whoever wins the true majority under the system would then emerge. So I wouldn't say that this is a, throw the bums out type of thing. I would say that in any one election, including the first one, ranked choice voting, you will have more candidates on the ballot, you will have more choices, and we can go forward from there. What else bugs people?
They're always training you just to vote, not to research who's actually going to be on the ballot, who's actually going to be the ones representing your values. It's your civic duty to vote, it's not your civic duty to know if the person you're voting for is actually representing your values.
Okay. And will research solve that problem? Are there enough people on the ballots when you go to vote that are?
What I'm saying is, they're not telling you to actually research who's getting on the ballot, who's actually worthy of being on the ballot. They're just telling you to go vote because they've already pre-selected those people.
So that's the civic thing, is go vote without looking without making it the informed, important decisions. Yes?
Two-party system where the parties seem to pick the candidates and all frequently not the people.
Okay, why is it a two-party system? Let's step back. Why is it a two-party? I grew up, and that was the phrase, right? Two parties. That's democracy. Would it surprise you to learn that democracies around the world, and people around the world aspire to a lot what we have and how we do things, but the one thing the world doesn't do is create a two-party system. They have ways, structural things. Ranked choice voting would be one of the various other forms of getting voices heard and elected, that it's not a two-party system. The classic case is when the Soviet Union disintegrated and all the republics emerged. They all wanted so much of what was available in this country. But the one thing they uniformly rejected was the electoral system we have, which demands and funnels things to a two-party system. And I'm going to be talking about the dynamics to do that. It's not two parties because they're strong, they're better, or anything else. It's the way the electoral system is structured, and that's what we're going to talk about. Anything else? Yes, Steve. Now,
candidates are discouraged from running because of the phony so-called
spoiler?
ethics
Ethics.
system where people have to disclose financial things that not only they may not wish to do, but takes up lots of time from a candidate, whereas the incumbents have their staff do it.
Okay. There's an answer that isn't going to be directly addressed in what I'm talking about for ranked choice voting, but that's an interesting one for sure. Anything that diminishes people from running you're concerned about. Yes?
Calling people a Nazi or racist just because they disagree with your views.
Okay, so there.
But like there are people who would otherwise run, but they're like, yeah, I don't feel like being called a Nazi or a racist, and so therefore I don't want to run.
Let's talk. Let's go into the type of campaigning. One of the things that's key to ranked choice voting, which we haven't talked about much, so let's just say this while we'll get into more. There's a ballot with multiple candidates. Presumably multiple because now it's safer to run. Back to what Matt started us off with. You can run and not fear that you're going to help elect the one you least like, okay? And we'll look at some example in Massachusetts on this. And that's the spoiler effect, and you don't, and you're not heard, and so don't run. That's what happens a lot. So now under ranked choice voting, it's just part of the tapestry of ranked choice voting that more people will take a stab at it. More parties, more individuals, more independents, more perspectives, because there's no risk. Not only is there no risk, as we described the transfer process where voters go in the booth and rank according to preference, and all those preferences may come into play, even if it's not your first choice, even if it's not necessarily your second choice, it's going to help elect a true majority winner. Well, that is a way of encouraging or diminishing the negative campaigning, okay? What's one of the first implications you notice when you hear about people have to rank their choices? You may not be winning the first choice of everyone that you meet when you're shaking hands at the supermarket and doing anything else and going door to door. You are not going to necessarily get them. You have your perspective, you have your view, you want to be heard, you want to win votes. But ultimately, are you going to be content with just your first choice votes? No, one of the things in ranked choice voting, as these preferences come into play, and we'll talk about the technical dynamics of how that happens, is if your first choice candidate doesn't make it, which is fair, with one seat open, not everyone's going to win if there's 5 candidates, right? Not everyone, that's one. You're going to be on the lookout for not just first choice votes, but to be on some people's ballots as the second choice.
Yeah.
Maybe the third. And that is a proven way to diminish negative campaigning. And you have a vested interest, and the studies are documenting this. It doesn't help you to tear apart opponents.
It only helps you if it's only 1 versus 1.
Yes, exactly.
Make them look better, but
correct. But that's, one of the things is we don't have enough candidates because we have a system that doesn't encourage other candidates. And the more we have a system that encourages candidates, there will be more candidates.
Yeah.
And again, when we're implementing in the state, for state representative, for governor, for U.S. senator, in Massachusetts, as we vote, only one person will win those seats that we're talking about. Can't promise the world. You can't say through this system.
Oh, yeah.
They're all, you're right. But what you can say is we're going to find out without limiting the right of people to go in and say, I want that person. I like what that person's saying. I cast my vote for that person. But on the other hand, I have my second and third choices. Let me give one example of just how this spoiler effect just drags things down. You talk about two-party systems. A lot of you remember 1980 election, presidential election. I know that's not a Massachusetts election, but we're going to talk about it. Who were the candidates? National candidates.
Carter and Ronald Reagan and
Carter and Reagan.
Mondale
Yes.
was in there too. And I think no.
Who was? No. Mondale was later.
No,
Who else?
Mondale was until he became vice president, right?
Right. John Anderson.
John Anderson.
John Anderson. Okay, let me tell you about John Anderson. And this has everything to do, ranked choice voting can tell you that if your first choice doesn't make it, you might, at least you didn't have to decide between the lesser of two evils, you didn't have to not vote for who you wanted. You can go, and that's a fair statement. I want to talk about the flip side of that. The chance that your first choice might really make it. And by the way, I'll go through any example here, and it doesn't matter my politics, your politics, or anything. Any example is a flaw in a democracy. And so, I won't get caught up in the specific example of who favored whom, but it's an example, right? So John Anderson was going to run as an alternative. He ran in the Republican primaries, and then he didn't make it there, and he realized he wanted to run as an independent. He'd been a 20-year Republican congressman from Illinois. Sort of just a regular old congressman, hadn't made a national reputation, starts running, and people are listening. This is what we go. So we're not going to just stress you can run, and if you don't win, and by the way, you won't win. Okay, we know that, all right? Then at least you have voted, and your conscience feels good, and and then you cast your second choice, and you hope that elects the person you prefer over the remaining people. We're going to focus. In June of that year, in 1980, he's at 24% of the polls. 24% in a national election. He finished at 8%. Why? Was it his message changed? Nope. It was the spoiler effect. Who billed him as a spoiler? What do you think? Democrats billed him as a spoiler. If you vote for John Anderson, you're electing Ronald Reagan. What do you think the Republicans did? Billed him as a spoiler. If you vote for John Anderson, you're going to be electing Jimmy Carter. No one said, is this a little insane? Why are we not voting for who we want? Why don't we have a way of figuring out who deserves our vote and a way for us to express it? He went down from 24 to 8% because of spoiler fears.
And we continue to do that.
And we continue to do that, okay? And by the way, I will tell you that in 1990, John Anderson heard a presentation on proportional representation and alternative voting forms and this alternative for single president elections, ranked choice voting. He heard about that, he learned more, and then he became the chair of the board of Fair Vote, an organization I helped found in 1992, and he became the chair of it for 15 years, well into his late 80s, early 90s, I believe. He did that for many years. There's an example of being heard or not being heard. And it's the system. It's the system. It's the system. That two-party system is designed to limit access for others. And so, ranked choice voting, and again, the mechanics are as simple as walking in on the ballot. And I remind you, the ballots won't be the same because as soon as you open up a system, people are going to take advantage of that opening. They're going to say, I can run. I want to be heard. And I want to have a chance to be heard enough that I can actually credibly run a credible campaign and not just be the, well, why not vote? Okay, I know I got some other thing, I got a backup. This is going to change, and it's the system. So what we're dealing with is, when I asked about what's wrong, some of it deals with fairness, some of it deals with messaging, some of it deals with command, all right? And I'm going to tell you something that I think is wrong with Massachusetts politics and elections. And I'm not even going to look at it right now. I have a map of showing the congressional districts in Massachusetts. There's 9. That's our allotment. It used to be 12, 11, 10. We're dropping by population, okay? And I'll tell you, I vote Democrat. Do you know what offends me about the congressional elections in Massachusetts? What are the results?
Democrats. They're always Democrats.
All are Democrats. Okay? Are other voters enfranchised in this state on congressional elections? They are not, okay? And would it change if we opened it up?
Oh yeah.
A lot, okay? And so, the State House, there's just other pieces where you're looking and saying, this is the system, all right? And if we had a system where people can have a chance to run, a chance to be heard, a chance to be pushed from the right, can't push the left, John Anderson pushing from the center, everyone starting to say the things that matter to a bunch of people who want that to be heard, then you start to have a more dynamic, competitive election system. So, let's cycle back just a bit. Bill told you about ranked choice voting in Worcester from 49 to 59. He mentioned it was part of a national movement, pretty good government oriented, came into New York City and other places throughout Tammany Hall, actually had Republicans elected on the New York City Council when they implemented it. And they came to Massachusetts, the planning city manager government with an elected council by this ranked choice voting. It's what we call multi-winner. There was 9 seats on the council, all elected by ranked choice voting. And it was also called proportional representation. Why? Because it allowed all voices to be heard and get a seat at the table. It was one of the most diverse moments in elections in Worcester's history, and voices were heard. Parts of the city geography without any districts, it wasn't West Side dominated. It was all just people casting their votes, ranking the candidates. Same thing, 1, 2, 3, okay? There were a lot more candidates for 9 seats. But it had a system of voting, of counting them, of dealing with that everyone, that a group of voters who share common interests, and that's what we're talking about, they share a common interest. If they got 10% of the vote, and that's how it works out, essentially, they're going to get 1% of the seat, one seat of the 9. It's a little over 10%, it's just a little way of calculating it. But it wasn't saying, it was saying don't freeze out voices. Don't give some voters 9 votes to elect 9 seats and leave out others. And it says we don't care what our, and this is why we're talking without regard for exactly what our specific political interests are. It's now we're talking about democracy. And so fairness is an issue. Ways of voting are an issue that make it the right thing to do. And when it's the right thing to do, your perspective has a chance. You have a chance to argue to be heard. You can go out there because the system won't shut you down. And so when Bill was addressing that glory days of the proportional representation, multi-winner, ranked choice voting in Worcester, what he was saying is people were heard. And the one thing you can say about a proportional system like Worcester used that allows minority perspectives to be heard is that it also guarantees that a majority of seats are won by the candidates who win, a majority of votes. Nothing mitigates majority rule. It's if voters around the city have an issue or a concern or things or perspective, that will emerge in the majority of the seats. But it also says, let's hear from everyone. That's a key point. And so that's the proportional representation side of the ranked choice voting. Yes, you ranked your ballot, and yes, it prevented you from even wasting it on someone who didn't need it to get elected. They are so dominant. James O'Brien, that name, and the airfield and all that, named after him. He would win twice as many as were needed. But no one had to say, well, I don't know if I should vote for Jim. He's going to have enough, and then but I should vote for this person. No, the transfer process that I described, you rank your ballots. If you don't need them to get elected, it goes to someone who does. That even applies to someone who had more than enough to win. It's a pretty incredible system like that. But then, also, if you don't have enough, let's say all of you wanted to run someone out of the system. But you wanted to run 2 people under that system, but you only have enough votes, you're probably going to elect one of those 9. You could run both, and what does ranked choice voting do? Let you rank your preferences. One of your candidates will get a lot of 1s, and the others will get the 2s. And if 1s isn't looking like it's going to make it, person's dropped off from the bottom of the list, where their vote's going to go? Right to your second choices, okay? And so, this simple concept of ranking totally opens the gates to someone saying, I'll run. I want to be heard. There's no risk. There's no one wondering that Matt's going to say, love to give you my vote, but if I feel that it's going to be a a plurality election and no one's going to have a majority, and I'm going to take the 5%, I don't want to be part of the 5% that gives it to you if it costs the election of the one I'm willing to have, all right? Gone, off the table, nothing. And it's all from ranking your votes. And we'll be talking, and I'll answer any question you have about the process of how this works, because but it's as simple as that. For the voter, you walk in, and instead of seeing just one list with yes or yes, and you can fill out one, I'll give this a 1, I'll give this a 2, 3, maybe a 4. It's simple for the voter. Worcester did lose its PR system, as Bill referenced. Yes, it was all part and tied into the paper ballots. It took a long time to count, fulfilling the 9 seats and that. Remember I said that process where if you have too many votes, more than you need for 1 seat, transfers? Yeah, it was simple. It just was time consuming. And now it's computerized. And a lot of cities lost it in Massachusetts. Did you know the legislature, which authorized it, worked incredibly hard to take it back? They changed in 1949 and say no other city can vote to adopt it. Gloucester had one scheduled a week after the law went into effect in '49, and they had to go to court. It was approved 70%. And the court said, well, the legislature had the right to say they couldn't even hold that election. Somerville, okay? So yes, Bill mentioned it's used in Cambridge, but it was used in Worcester, and Lowell, and Medford, and Saugus. The count was a problem, but so was the reaction. We don't want to hear all these voices. You create a system that will encourage not only voting for, so you feel better, but a chance to success, okay? You can get one of those 9 seats under the system, or 6 seats on the school committee, or variations on that. It was, the reaction against it was because these systems did what it was supposed to do. Now, I didn't promise you that incumbents can't get reelected, all right? So, but what it does is clear these systems, all right? They say what they're going to do, what effects it will have, and when they had those effects, guess what? Some people drew back and said, we were, yes, and certainly the city machines, where it was adopted, fought back. And so the legislature blew the whistle and said, we're taking this away, and Worcester, it's easier, made it easier to put on the ballots, fewer signatures needed. Worcester defeated a repeal vote in 1959. The legislature, in concert with the opponents in Worcester, put it on the ballot of a state election ballot in 1960, specifically appealing to those who don't vote. Who don't vote in the municipal election on the off year, okay, the municipal year. So they put it on the state ballot, totally different dynamic and electorate, which they had the right to do, but it was a concerted effort Worcester was the last one in Massachusetts holding on. People knew what they had, they voted for it in '59. Don't take away our system, ranked choice voting system, and in 1960 it did go away. So, yes?
Could you just touch briefly on the mechanics of how they were counted?
Sure.
In Worcester, how that...
Yeah. I will do that while saying it's computerized now, okay? And with a paper trail and all that stuff, and I'm not the ultimate computer person on those rules, so I just don't want to say that. So the mechanics of that, you had all the ballots came in, and there was a random draw of the precincts. So it was drawn out of a hat, which precincts you're going to count first. And that's going to matter. Remember I talked about if someone Jim O'Brien would have too many, all right, more than you needed for 1 seat, twice as many. Transferring is this technical part of why those precincts were randomly drawn. And then the ballots were hand-stamped in order of which they were counted. 7 precinct, Ward 7-2, was first, and they would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right, and then the next precinct in the random draw, and they were numbered. So if there were 25,000 ballots cast in that election, they're numbered 1 through 25,000. And so the first thing you have to do is just get rid of that extra that's not needed. And that's a theme you're going to hear in ranked choice voting. A vote that's not needed to elect somebody should go to one of your second choices or third choices who can use it. You never have to say, which one should I vote for? Okay, so keep that in mind. So let's say James O'Brien cleared twice as many as he needed. Ballot number 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, right through to 25,000, would they look up the second choice on the ballot? Literally in that hand count, it would go onto that person's pile. Okay, you with me? It would simply get taken away from someone who didn't need it and be put on that pile.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, this is where I have the problem. What if you are sure of who you want to vote for? And there's a vast majority of people who are totally sure, they're totally on board. This candidate is running away with the campaign, everybody loves him or her, everything's going great, and come election day, he's got all these votes, he's running away, it's a landslide. According to your system, well, he doesn't need all those votes, because it's obvious he's gonna win. So we'll just take some of those votes and give them to somebody else. How is that fair?
Are you talking about the Worcester?
Well, going back to what you had said about we no longer have to choose which one do I vote for. What if there's somebody that everybody does want to vote for?
They voted for them. They voted for them.
But you just said that this person doesn't need all, hang on a second, that the person doesn't need all these votes. So we'll take some of them away and give them to somebody else. How is that? I'm sorry, it sounds like socialism to me, man.
The second person is artificially inflated.
Right,
because
exactly.
The first person would have gotten.
Let's give this group of James O'Brien and 4 other candidates a term Party A. Okay, it's nonpartisan elections, but Group A, right? And Group A has enough support in the city to win 3 seats. All right? And, sorry. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Has enough support to win 3 of the 9 seats. And they run 6. I'm changing it from 4. All right? What this system does is allow that group of people who support this Group A to vote for whomever they want in that group, whoever they like best within them. Sort of like a primary, you could say, of culling out. But if James O'Brien, I'm going to stick with this example, right? Pulled twice as many as that, enough to win 1 seat, what's that going to do to the other 5 candidates in Group A? They're going to lose out. They're going to have some people say, we love James O'Brien, right? And I'm not going to vote for that one and that one. And eventually, they may not win the 3 seats that they collectively have enough support for. That's the difference here. The transfer process says, if you can't use it together, James already has more than he needs. A lot more, okay? But we know some of his voters want other people who are just like him and believe just what they believe and support just what they support. And we want to make sure they're carried along without someone saying, I think James is going to get too many, so I better vote for that one. But wait a second, that one just had a little scandal in the newspaper. I don't want to put my chips on that person. It allows that voting group to cast their votes for that group of similar interested candidates and have it work to their their ability to win those 3 of 9 seats. Yes?
Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding
Yeah.
this, but the way I would explain this to my dear friend Christopher is you think of it more along the lines of gerrymandering, where you break up the votes and you put them in different districts so that there is a majority.
Hacking and cracking.
Majority gets put into different districts so that they would win. But this way, the votes, they don't have to have a rigid district. If you have so many people who want to vote that way, they vote that way and they only get that much power. Where the current system with the gerrymandering of districts allows them to defeat viable candidates by breaking up people's interests in their geography.
Well said. And by the way, these systems are the ultimate weapon against gerrymandering.
Exactly.
And that perfectly and well said, Matt.
Well, being a person who can even contradict myself in the same sentence, I do it all the time on the radio show.
Yeah.
Whereas I understand where you're going, because what you had said before is about how here in Massachusetts, we have nothing, I mean, it's like, what, 97% Democrats in the legislature? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Whereas the
in the
concept,
80,
well, whatever it is,
percent.
the concept is that because it's so lopsided, people who in the state of Massachusetts who are Republicans and maybe conservatives, we're marginalized. We don't get a voice. Whereas what you're saying with the ranked voting, it's like it could restore some of that balance. Okay, say the Republicans are still in the minority, a 53 to 47. At least you know, yeah, there's 47%. And now you're being represented then.
Absolutely.
So even though I said what I said earlier, I'm kind of contradicting myself because I do understand where you're going.
And that surplus transfer I talked about is just one piece of it. Let me just quickly say, it then flows towards, what if someone who's very close gets enough transfer votes and sweeps right in as the second of the 3 seats that there's enough votes to win? And you drop from the bottom, which is a theme we'll talk about for like electing your state rep or the governor or a U.S. senator. You drop from the bottom, someone doesn't have enough votes to win. Because remember, in those, and in these elections, you drop from the bottom and you transfer the ballots because at least I gave my vote to the person I most wanted or my second choice. They can't use it because they lost. Sorry, there's only so many seats, okay? Or only 1 seat in some of the things we're talking about. It says, yeah, you're right, it's sharing it, but that's the design. And by the way, a voter is free to vote. Rank only 1 choice. There's no rule under ranked choice voting that you have to go put a second on
your ballot.
Or it's your ballot. And so much, I don't think they're lesser of 2 evils. I think they're all evil. Here's my 1 person, my 1 vote. That's a freedom under ranked choice voting. And some people use it. And that's fine, okay? But if you don't want to be told, don't vote for that one because, it might have this effect. Ranked choice voting says, you're good. Use your preferences, yes.
So how many, you go to the ballot box, how many choices do you have?
Okay, so what are we talking? The Worcester thing, or let's move to one of the state. The state. You're running for state senate, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a general election that will be held, and let's say there's 4 candidates running in a ranked choice, okay? And how many people are going to win? 1. What's the requirement to get elected? A majority, all right? And so you literally would see, you would have a way on your ballot to put next to the name, my first preference, Steve Hall, right? Okay? And they put it number 1. Or they would literally bubble what we're expecting an optical scanning ballot, where next to your name was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And they bubble in the 1 for Steve Hall. That's their first choice. Then their second choice is on the ballot, and they would bubble that 2. And if they want, a third. So what they're saying, 2 things. What you're saying is, I have the right to run and be heard now because some people are free to vote for me. What they're saying is, well, I'm not sure. I don't know if Steve's going to make it, okay? Maybe it's a gerrymandered district, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's just not your time, okay? I will then have my choice of the other candidates. So literally you're ranking, you're putting numbers down. In Worcester, in the 50s, you would write a pencil. You would write in 1, 2, 3, 4 next to names. This time, a computerized optical scanning ballot would be the bubble, literally, okay? And then the computer takes over. We're not dealing with this too many to win, because what's the requirement to be elected to 1 seat under ranked choice voting?
Just a majority.
A majority. Is that the majority? Is that the requirement now? Do we have majority voting? How many people grew up thinking majority in democracy were like soup and
Well, that's
sandwich,
the
right?
problem with the presidential election. Everybody thinks we're a democracy, and
Okay.
we're not. We're a constitutional republic, and there's a whole different system for the presidential elections.
There is, yes, certainly a whole different system.
So that's, well, Hillary got the popular vote. It doesn't matter.
It does, of course, there were 51 separate elections being run. But can you imagine ranked choice in the presidential election, which is not, on a national scale, is not right on anyone's immediate horizon. There's a lot that frees up people to say, this is who I want most, and then this is who my second choice. And we know that's going to play out. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. Yes?
So if you have 1 winner, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you have an election where there's 1 winner,
a state rep or a governor or something like that.
Sure. And, you know, the first 60% of the votes counted yield 51% for a candidate. You can stop there. You don't need to count anymore, right?
60.
You're counting. Your ranked numbers 1 to
No, you count all the ballots. Let's phrase it this way.
But why?
Because you want to know what the
you
results
wanna
are.
know what the
You want to know
numbers
what,
are.
no, but let me answer that this way. You, and I got confused whether you were saying 51% of the 60%, okay?
No.
Of the
So
total.
You've only counted
Here's the
60% so far.
here's the answer. There's no second round, no second process if someone clears that majority threshold the first time. That's it. Race is over. The only thing I'm going to say is
Okay,
you
but-
count all 100% of the votes and you report that the race was 63% for this candidate, 30% for that one, 15, I'm losing my numbers here, but you would count all the ballots.
You're only looking at ones.
And once the election's over, if someone has a majority. Let me show you something on this, okay? And I'll show these systems, and I'll show you some examples of that. But that, great question. I'm only going to say all the ballots are counted, okay? Because you want to know what the results are.
Sure you do, but
Yes,
you
sir.
wouldn't technically need to.
Technically, no, you
Okay.
wouldn't need to,
But- but-
it's really important.
You'd
Let's
want it
stick-
for certification.
Yes, let's stick with the core part there of an excellent question. The election is over. What's the goal of RCV? To find the majority winner, not let a 43, 42, 16, play out where you're guessing, gee, would the second place finisher have been able to move, up and forward, and win? That can't happen, but absolutely. You count first choices, or the computer counts first choices, boom, election over. What did we want to find out? We wanted to find out who was the true majority winner, without splitting votes, without spoilers and all that stuff. We found it out. The first choices, done. I'll show you how that looks, okay? And